Hi, and welcome to Helping People Perform, the podcast that gives you fascinating insights into those people whose chosen vocation is to help others perform at their best. From consultants to teachers, sports coaches to financial advisors, all of my guests share a passion for getting the most out of individuals, teams, and organisations. Enjoy the episode. So welcome to another episode of the Helping People Perform podcast. Today I'm joined by Julian Roberts, who is a good friend and met through a network of people recently, and has introduced me and helped me along with some of this podcast work as well. So really happy to have you on board today, Julian.
It's good to see you, Paul, and good to have this conversation. I'm really looking forward to it.
Fantastic. And Julian, you're an executive and business coach. You help people unlock potential. You also are about creating resilient teams and things like that. So there's lots of great themes about helping people perform that I'd love to get into today. But before we go into that part of things, could you just tell us a little bit about your background? How have you got to where you are today?
Yes, that question, how have I got here, is an interesting one, isn't it? Well, I spent sort of just over 20 years working in the food industry, working for companies like Heinz, Yoplait, some big ones, but also some smaller businesses as well. I've had a passion for food and had a passion for the industry, predominantly working in sales and marketing, so leading sales teams, dealing with the wonderful likes of Tesco and Asda, and negotiating, cost price increases and getting listings, that wonderful thing, and thoroughly enjoyed it. And throughout that time, and had some challenges as you do in that industry, and probably even more challenges right now. But I came to, I think it was probably 6 years ago, I started to have those sort of two things that started to collide. One thing was I was working in a toxic environment, which was a first time experience. I remember people talking about that years ago, and I thought, what's that about? And I experienced it, which wasn't great. And sometimes I'm thankful for that because it created a moment. And then the other thing that was coming as well at the same time was that my wife and I were looking to foster a child as well. So those two things came, and we were looking for some perhaps more flexibility. And I'd lost my little bit of mojo for what I was doing because the toxicity I was working in. And I started to think, well, what do I do? What do I do with this? And so I sort of reflected back actually on my career. And as much as I enjoyed hitting the sales targets and the profit targets and launching new products and getting excited about that and sort of working with sales teams, what really got me excited was working with my team and individuals, and just getting alongside them and seeing them really take flights and do some amazing things for themselves with my intervention of what I call coaching at the time. And that's what I started to do. And it was this, I kept coining this phrase about unlocking potential, which sounds a very cliche thing, but that's what I kept coining. I thought, that's what I like to do. And so I did jump ship. Initially, I did some consultancy. I still do some consultancy work with companies. And in that time of consulting with companies on strategies, I then retrained as an executive coach. I felt I needed to sort of get the skills and the training and get exposure to people, observing me, feeding back, all that type of thing. And then since then, I've now developed a coaching practice where I every day have the opportunity to truly unlock people's potential. It sounds very corny, but it really is a passion for me. And that's done, individually, but also done in teams as well. So that was where I've come from and where I am today, I guess.
Right. A wonderful story. And I've spoken to a few people both on this podcast and just in general, and people's transition from that sort of corporate world, the standard world. I've done exactly the same, where I was in the work, helping people in my teams and things like that move on. But to take that transition and move on to what is something that is really just there to help others perform, it is a bit of a big leap, isn't it? And
huge.
It's an interesting one, but one that I've thoroughly enjoyed, and I'm sure you have as well.
mean, I've been quite fortunate. I mean, I've worked for the big organizations where it's very corporate, very centralized. Heinz wasn't particularly my best sort of culture for me, but I've also worked in very entrepreneurial, dynamic businesses as well. And I think always I've had this desire, probably for a long time, to go on my own in some capacity. I never knew what it was. And I always loved when I worked in organizations where I had the free rein just to go off and create new markets, new areas of interest and business development. And I guess when I had the opportunity, out of, I guess, adversity, because I always think adversity is something you can be propelled forward by it, or you can knock you back. And I guess, I took that leap, and I've just not looked back at all. Absolutely love it. Yes, there is challenges, of course there is, but you're in a little bit more control of your own destiny, and it's a great way to continue to do business and make money.
Yeah, indeed. And so what is that for you these days? So what do you do? Who do you help? How do you help others perform?
Yeah, I guess it's a mixture. I go into organizations, and I might, coach people individually, and that could be some people who've got just been newly promoted and they need to have that sort of support and help. It might need more greater confidence in the boardroom. It might need a business owner who's just realized that the business has grown and they need either a mindset shift on to increase that growth, but also it might be that they want to now sort of do more, not public speaking or so, but speak to larger teams and more confidence in that.
Right.
So I might help them with that. And then, it might be a business owner just wants to, or a leader of a business wants to just create a better future for themselves, but also for their business. And I help them sort of smash down those sort of limiting beliefs, change some mindsets. I have one client who he had this real mindset of everything was all in 3 years, 5 years sort of mindset, sort of planning, which is okay. I'm all for 3 year, 5 year plans. And he kept saying it throughout this conversation. I said, "Why do you do it today?" and it sort of stopped him a little bit. And he went, "Oh," I said, "Was anything stopping you doing it today?" And he went, "Well, not really." I said, "We'll do it today then." And so he had a very simple challenge, very simple shift in his mindset. He started to do things today. But then he did still obviously plan. And I caught up with him about just over 18 months ago after that time. And he says, "Julian, that one thing you did and shifted my mindset I've done more in the last 18 months than in 5 years before that." And that to me is unlocking somebody's potential. He had loads of potential and he was already successful in what he was doing. But that little shift of me observing something and then flipping the switch, so to speak, and challenging him has then created him to be more, not just do lots, but be more productive and efficiently and create something far better and unlocking that potential. So that's individuals. And I love doing that in sort of various guises. And then also I work with teams, and the teams piece is something quite new in the last sort of 18 months, really. It's funny because when you go into the world of coaching, you think it's just about one-to-one. And then I realized, actually, I used to love leading a team. And not that when I'm coaching a team, it's not leading them, but there's something about that team dynamic, something about that, lots of people in the interaction. And I had the opportunity to coach a team of ladies who were looking to row around Great Britain and break a world record.
Yes.
And that was sort of like athletic team, slightly different, but they're still people. And it's whether in a boat or an organization, it still works. And I really enjoyed that, and I felt it was a real privilege. But building in resilience, psychological safety, and creating a high performing team. And that's what I'll do with organizations in some guise. And it's interesting, I have this thread of resilience always comes out throughout what I do, certainly within team dynamics, to try and make sure that team is got longevity, it's got able to take shocks, but also to really stand the test of time and take that agility to keep moving and stuff. So yeah, teams as well. So that quite a mixture of stuff, but it all ends up me thinking with my intent on anybody interaction I have is how can I help them unlock their potential, which sounds very corny, but it's as simple as that, really. And I use the tools and the experience I've got to endeavor to do that.
And I love the value, and this is the reason for this podcast, essentially, is the sheer value of having people brought in externally to help you shift that mindset, challenge you, understand different perspectives, bring in different ways of working. I just want to delve a little bit into one of the phrases there, which is around the beliefs and limiting beliefs in particular. So what's your experience of limiting beliefs, and how do you, how can you help people go about getting over those beliefs?
Yeah, it's interesting because I meet a lot of executives and business owners who broadly know what they want to achieve, and in terms of their goals, although I can help them get clarity on that, but and in some sense they sort of know how to do it. What stops us all really is that limiting belief. I don't have a belief that I can do this, I can achieve this. It's like setting out to climb Mount Snowdon for something in Wales. You know what you want to do, and you know how you need to do it, do a bit of training, walking, hike, all that type of thing. But if you don't believe you can get to the top, you probably won't make any steps to get there. And so I do a lot of stuff with people, and just that reframe I did with that individual who kept putting things into 3 year, 5 year was a belief. That was a belief. And with things with beliefs, whatever beliefs we have, our system, our psyche looks for confirmation. It's called confirmation bias. And it looks for confirmation to, that's what I believe, and I'll look for stuff to confirm that. And so if that belief is wrong, or that narrative is wrong, or that narrative doesn't serve you, then it will just confirm something that won't serve you, and it won't be helpful. Just like that guy I spoke to about, 3 year, 5 year planning, that didn't serve him in that purpose. Doesn't mean 3 year, 5 year planning is not valid. It wasn't serving him, but serving him by getting more things now created a new belief, a new narrative as a reframe, basically. Then he looks for confirmation how he executes on that, and therefore he got that momentum going. So it's a really powerful thing, and I believe it's something can be really subtle when you're in conversation. People don't come to me with a whole list of limiting beliefs.
Can you help me with this limiting belief?
Because they don't. Nobody knows. I don't know they are, and we all have them. But I look for narratives. I look for what the phrases and sort of patterns that they're saying, and I think, is that serving them? And if it's not serving them, that's when I'll bring a challenge, and then we'll bring a reframe to that, and that starts to really create the sort of the power to me in terms of that unlocking. It's like taking the lid off, literally, of yourself. So yeah, it's a powerful thing.
Certainly is, and I know I've been through that experience myself with coaches, and even in my latest career shift and going on my own, even starting this podcast and things, I had a lot of, I'm going to start that after this, I'm going to start that after this, and I got a lot of challenge back from people as to, why not give it a go, just try it out now, or try a little experiment to see how it goes, learn from it, and move on. So I love the ability that coaches have to notice those things and highlight them to you, and just to get you think differently.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think we've got to remember that we all have a natural bias to be negative on our view.
No, we don't.
And we have to think about that, and so no, our natural bias is negative. Our natural bias is won't achieve, and we need to create those right narratives and not get caught up with the narratives that we've had to this point. What has got us here won't get us there, type of that sort of old adage sort of quote. But it's so true. It really is true. And if you want to start a business, and like you've done and like I've done, I had to change narratives, different beliefs, and what I could do and what I can't do. And it's so exciting, because you get into areas of slightly scary places, and you're thinking, what am I doing here? Then you get the imposter syndrome coming in, which I quite like imposter syndrome, because for me it creates this little signal to me that I'm pushing the boundaries a little bit. I'm in an area where I'm growing, because I'm not entirely sure here. And I feel that's a good little sign of feeling I'm not a fake, but I'm like, I'm not so sure about this. But yes, it's exciting, and life's to be lived in that way, isn't it?
It certainly is. One of the bits that I like to talk to people about as well is, how do you lift up your own performance? What's the channels? Who do you talk to? Are there different environments or different things that you do that help you lift your own performance?
You make a real valid point and a valid question, Rick. I think that's certainly as a coach or as individuals, we need to be in that sort of frame of mind of in personal development. There's me expecting my clients to be in that zone. I've got to be a role model. I don't have to tell them or show that, but they'll know if I'm developing myself and pushing myself and making sure that I'm honing my skill. There's a number of things I do. I have a coach I meet sort of every month, and she is sort of coach mentoring stroke supervisors, a mixture of stuff. So if I get stuck with a client, or I'll share that with her and she'll help me navigate that for next time and learn from it. I might share my frustrations with her. I might have other things, and she'll just help coach me, mentor me. And I feel, to me, that's really valuable time. And as much as I encourage everybody to get into coaching, as in get a coach, I've got one myself, and I feel it's a real valuable investment and helps me just get those blind spots, those things of, am I doing stuff that's not serving me or serving my clients? So that's that. I'm currently in the last bits of my master's in psychology, just doing the thesis bits, which is interesting. And the reason I did that, not out of any, I need to do a master's in psychology, it's just I felt a few years ago I got really interested in the sort of human behavior, and I just wanted to get more an understanding and more depth and richness to bring to my sort of practice. So I went on and started a master 2 years ago, and that's been really good. It's been very different, very challenging, but it's actually really honed some sort of understandings of sort of cognitive understanding of behaviors, why people do things, and I think it's really brought some value to my clients. And then I'm not a huge reader. It's just I find reading just hard for me. I don't know, just one of those things. So I do a lot of listening to podcasts as well, just to get some inspiration, whether it's listening to yourselves or Stephen Barnett, Dive CEO, or Johnny Wilkinson's I Am, those sort of ones that can give you some inspirations. And so constantly in a frame of what can I learn? And obviously, I run my own podcast, and I use that as an opportunity to learn from people who are great as well. So that's very important.
Yep, and we'll make sure we put the links to that podcast. That's helping organizations thrive, isn't it?
It is, and it's a passion thing for me. I've been doing it a couple of years now, and it's just like yourself. It's just having conversations with people. I love it, and learn so much from interacting with people from all around the world. It's a brilliant thing. I love it. Yeah,
it really does open up the mind to even if you are doing very similar things, everyone's got a slightly different angle or a different perspective on things that you can, I'm noting down a load of things as we go through here, as I do with most of these interviews. And there's always something in there that you can just challenge your own thinking. You can do something a bit different and move that forward. So fantastic. And I know you're a big networker as well. You're saying you've been at a networking breakfast this morning, and
I love to network. I never used to like it. I used to hate it. Now I love it, and it's not. It's interesting because I don't see just networking just to get business, because that's just so transactional. So just there's people who come up to you and all they're interested in is getting business. It's, for me, building communities, friendships, being part of something, serving others, helping others out, and as a networking event last night as well, and getting to new venues, different places. It's just I'm an extrovert actually, but not obviously. I'm not like sort of shouting onto the stage extrovert, but I actually get energy from other people. Right. I came back last night, got back at 8 o'clock. And I was buzzing, absolutely buzzing. My wife said, I was literally absolutely buzzing because I was networking. I was with people. So
No, it is amazing, because even if we've got the flip side. I mean, one of my other guests, Jens Heitland, he was talking about being an introvert, and even though he's a big connector of people, massive networker, his energy comes in having the ability to be by himself and absorb everything that he's heard from various people and to really think about it. So it's not, there's never a single fit, is there, in terms of the type of people that can go into these roles? It's exactly. And there's lots of different angles you can go into. I love it. So a couple of different questions then, in terms of let's call them ideal clients? You know, who would you really love to be working with? Who do you think, you know, if I could have the opportunity to use my skill set to help these people, this organization, this team perform, who might that be? Who comes to mind in that one?
There's no one particular. For me, I like working with teams. Teams is something I love doing. I love helping to create teams that are resilient. So that's really sort of passionate about what I do. And it's teams who've got a massive ambition, and almost an ambition that they feel is way beyond them. I love that sense of, you know, that team of athletes who came to me, rowers, going to break a world record, going to row around 2,000 miles around, you know, GB. It's like, that's absolutely crazy. You know, it's that sort of, I get excited, you know, I'm increasingly getting more and more people on my podcast. Not that, I have CEOs, I have leaders on there, but more and more people who are doing extreme stuff, you know, whether that's, you know, the youngest lady to row across the Atlantic at 21 years old. You know, I've got a lady coming on soon who's done triathlons in a row. So there's something about that extreme stuff. Yeah, somebody's got some massive ambition, feels a bit like scary. Love it.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. And flipping that on its head a little bit, if you were able to have a coffee, a beer, a networking event with any particular individual or groups that you think you could really learn from and could help you perform, who might that be?
Well, this person's not alive right now, unfortunately.
Limiting belief, mate.
Maybe, yeah. And the reason, it's just, for me, it's sort of Nelson Mandela, really, because there's something about his life. I know some of the stuff early days probably we don't always agree with, but what came out of it and how he used adversity, difficulty, lots of years in prison, and still was full of gratitude, full of kindness, and then end up leading the nation of South Africa. And to me, I just love to just be and sit with him and just have more than a coffee and a beer and spend a lot of time with him and just understand how do you do that? How do you go through that? And without bitterness and malice, and it's just so powerful stuff. And I think it's, I've loved to have had the opportunity to have done that. But yeah, that's great. Yeah,
I mean, going through with one of your key themes there of resilience, you don't get much better example of resilience than Nelson Mandela, do you?
Absolutely, yeah.
One of the areas, finally, as we look to wrap things up, I always like to think about how do people get in touch with you? But I just want to ask one question on this first, which is, how do you usually get business in? You know, do you have, you talk about coaching executives and business leaders and things like that. Does your business tend to come from a contract with a wider organization, and then people are pointed in your direction? Is it more individuals come in contact with you? I'm always interested in those sort of channels as well.
Yeah, it's a mixture. It's a mixture of working with an organization and they sponsor 1, 2, 3 people or a team, or it's what I call private clients who are literally paying for themselves, or business owners. So it is a mixture of people, and I say it's coming from, you know, the referrals, it's all the stuff you do nowadays, you know, the social LinkedIn and everything else, and network. It's a various ways it comes, and it's just keeping yourself, for me, being more visible and just trying to create that opportunity to have those conversations with people.
Awesome. And so how do people find out more? If they want to know more about you and what you do, your podcast, where do we find out more?
Best way is try LinkedIn, just type in my name, and hopefully I'll come up with something looking what you're seeing now, or I'm sure you put links to this, or you can go to my website, which is julianrobertsconsulting.com, and you can find the links to the podcast on there, which is helping organizations thrive. And you can either watch that on YouTube, or you can go onto Spotify or any other platform. It's all available there.
Awesome. And I will put in all the links. I can highly recommend. I listen to Julian's podcast a lot, and they're always fascinating conversations with people who are already high performing and want to do more, and just challenging themselves. And I think it's a great inspiration for a lot of people just to reach out, look for coaches, look for people who can support you and help you to perform. So Julian, it's been a fascinating conversation. I'm sure we'll have more conversations around this in future, but just want to say thank you for being on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me, Paul. I've enjoyed it, and it's just whizzed by, as these things do. Thank you very much.
Superb. See you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you liked what you heard, then please give the podcast a rate, review, and share. I'm Paul Teasdale, and from sausage making to banking, oil and gas to Formula One, I help people perform. If you'd like to find out more and have a conversation, contact me via helpingpeopleperform.com.